Imagine waking up on your wedding night only to discover the man you've trusted for 8 years is hiding a dark secret. Another wife, 3 children, and a life you never knew existed 3,000 m away. What would you do? This is the shocking truth behind Leila Mansuri's wedding night and the twisted chain of events that led to her final breath. Calgary, Alberta. A city where wealth flows as freely as its rivers and reputation is worth more than gold. In this world of pristine facades lived 34-year-old Sheikh Omar al-Rashid. A man whose charm was as polished as his multi-million-dollar lifestyle. But behind his luxurious exterior, a darkness brewed hidden from even his closest allies. A self-made oil mogul, Omar's wealth made him a powerful figure in Calgary. His lavish lifestyle, exclusive parties, and impeccable reputation made him the man every woman wanted and every man wanted to be. But what no one knew was the life he kept locked away from the public eye. Then there was Leila Mansuri, stunning, intelligent, and utterly devoted to her new husband. For years, she had believed their life together was perfect. Little did she know, the man she had married was living a double life, one that would unravel in the most horrific way. Leila would walk down the aisle as a bride, her dream of a perfect marriage about to crash into a nightmare she never saw coming. Omar al-Rashid, a third-generation oil executive, inheriting a $200 million energy empire. To the world, he was the embodiment of success. Charismatic, influential, and seemingly flawless. But behind his polished public persona, there was something darker. Something only a select few knew. In private, Omar's life was fractured. A man torn between two worlds, both built on lies. Leila Mansuri, brilliant, independent, and from a prestigious Lebanese-Canadian family. At 31, she was at the top of her field as an architectural engineer. And to the outside world, she had it all. But there was one thing she didn't know. The man she loved had a past he never mentioned. And then there was Nadia Curry, 29, a marketing executive with her own successful career in Montreal. Omar's secret first wife, a woman who thought she had built a family with him, only to find out the truth would tear everything apart. Their children, twin boys, 7 years old, and their 5-year-old daughter, oblivious to the lies surrounding them, caught in the crossfire of their father's duplicity. 2 lives, 2 families, and 1 man hiding everything behind a veil of lies. But how long could he keep it all hidden? The lies were about to unravel, and the consequences would be fatal. But Omar was living 2 completely different lives. And tonight, both worlds were about to collide as Leila took her first steps into what she thought was a lifetime of happiness. The truth was just one breath away from shattering everything. And in Montreal, Nadia, Omar's secret first wife, was about to uncover the lies she'd been living with for years. The moment she had feared was here. 2 women, 1 man, and a web of deceit that would lead to a deadly unraveling. The game was about to change. And no one would walk away unscathed. For 8 years, Omar had been living a double life, flying between Calgary and Montreal every month. To his family in Calgary, these were simple business trips to Quebec's oil refineries. A routine he had perfected. To Leila, Omar was the perfect husband, faithful, loving, present. They spent their weekends in the city's finest restaurants, exploring their future together. But these trips were never about business. They were about escape. Meanwhile, in Montreal, Nadia Curry believed Omar's lies. She thought he was a struggling entrepreneur, constantly on the road for work, fighting to make ends meet. What she didn't know was that her husband was hiding a fortune she never could have imagined. What Nadia didn't know was that Omar had been living another life. A life filled with luxury, money, and a woman named Leila, who was about to become his second wife. For years, Nadia had been blind to the man she had married. She thought she knew him, but the truth was buried beneath layers of lies. But Nadia never suspected a thing until the truth came knocking at her door. She didn't know about the empire he had built in Calgary, or about Leila, the woman who thought she was his one and only. The lies were about to be exposed in the most devastating way possible. And the truth would leave no one untouched. The week leading up to Leila's wedding, strange messages started appearing on her phone. Messages she couldn't ignore. Messages that hinted at a life her husband had kept hidden. Who was sending them? And what did they want her to know? Meanwhile, Nadia's suspicions grew. She began to piece together the strange inconsistencies. The long absences, the sudden changes in behavior, and those pictures she'd never seen before. A photo of her husband in Montreal's Parc La Fontaine with his children. The children she never knew existed. She dug deeper. Bank records showing dual residences, separate accounts, separate lives. Omar had been paying for 2 homes, one in Calgary, one in Montreal. How could she have missed it? And then the unthinkable. False identity documents, names that weren't his, places he had never mentioned. Omar had built an entire second life, one that he had kept hidden from Nadia and now from Leila. Nadia had been growing suspicious for months. His absences were getting longer. His stories didn't add up. But the truth. This truth was far more than she could have ever imagined. Leila too was starting to feel the weight of the truth. Her dream wedding, the life she thought she was stepping into, was crumbling in front of her eyes. She was trapped between 2 worlds, one of love, the other of betrayal. As the stakes rose higher, the tension between the 2 women, the 2 lives was about to explode, and only one could walk away from the wreckage. June 15, 2023. Calgary's social event of the year. The Fairmont Banff Springs Hotel was transformed into a palace, hosting over 400 guests in a celebration that cost Omar al-Rashid $2 million. An extravagant display of wealth and opulence. Everything was perfect. Flawless, just as Omar had planned. 4. Ayla, it was the day she had always dreamed of. The man she loved, standing there, waiting to make her his forever. She walked toward him, unaware that the perfect life she envisioned was about to be shattered. But even in the beauty of the moment, there was a subtle tension. An unease, a sense that something wasn't quite right. The guests smiled, their eyes sparkling with excitement. But Omar's thoughts were elsewhere. For him, tonight was no longer about the wedding. It was about survival. In Montreal, Nadia had already begun to put the pieces together, the messages, the photos, the lies. And now she knew Omar was in Calgary marrying Ayla. The perfect facade was about to collapse. Omar's perfect night was beginning to unravel. He'd been living this lie for years, but now the cracks were starting to show. And on the day he was supposed to celebrate his new life, it seemed the past was catching up with him in the most unforgiving way. Secrets have a way of surfacing. And tonight, they would be exposed. As the night wore on, the elegance of the wedding gave way to an undeniable tension. A slow burning storm that was about to erupt. As Ayla danced, surrounded by friends and family, she had no idea that Omar's mind was no longer with her. The carefully constructed world he had built was slipping through his fingers, and it wouldn't be long before the truth came crashing down. Omar thought he could control the narrative. But tonight, it was out of his hands. The question wasn't if the truth would come out. It was when. And as the night wore on, Omar realized that the secret he had kept hidden for years was about to be exposed. Ayla's wedding night, the night she thought would define their love, was quickly turning into a nightmare she never saw coming. The night was supposed to be a dream come true. But as Ayla's world spun with laughter and celebration, a different kind of delivery was making its way to her bridal suite. An anonymous package with no return address, but a promise of truths that would tear everything apart. Inside the photographs, pictures of Omar with his children smiling, laughing in a park in Montreal. Images of a life Ayla never knew existed. Her fingers freeze as she flips through them. Each one a gut punch of revelation. Then the documents, a marriage certificate. Omar's name next to someone else's. Nadia Curry, his wife, the first of his two worlds, the birth certificates, his children. Her heart races, her world crumbles in real time as she realizes the truth. Her perfect husband, the man she trusted, had been living a life she never knew. A second family, a secret he had kept hidden from her for years. In the span of moments, Ayla's entire life, her marriage, her dreams, her love was nothing more than a facade. Omar's lies were no longer just whispers in the dark. They were now standing in the light. And Ayla had nowhere to hide. The wedding night that was meant to mark the beginning of a perfect life together was instead becoming a confrontation with the truth she never wanted to face. Ayla's world was shattering before her eyes, and the man who had promised her forever was nowhere to be found. But the Most dangerous secrets are the ones we refuse to face. And now Leila would have to decide how far she was willing to go. To uncover the truth about the man she had called her husband. According to police transcripts, when Leila confronted Omar that night, her exact words were, "Who is Nadia Corey? And why are her children calling you daddy?" The confrontation had begun and there was no turning back. Leila had uncovered the truth, but the question remained. What would she do with it? What happened next would change multiple families forever. For nearly a decade, Omar had kept his marriage a secret from his Calgary family, his world of wealth and power, choosing to hide the truth behind his business empire. A web of lies spanning nearly a decade. Two families, two lives, each built on secrets, each a ticking time bomb waiting to explode. Court documents reveal Leila's response was swift and devastating. The weight of Leila's words, her promise to tear everything he had built apart, hung heavy in the air. It was clear that there would be no coming back from this moment. The man she thought she knew had betrayed her in the most unimaginable way. And in that moment, Leila's life was changed forever. No longer the bride. She was now a woman torn between revenge and the broken pieces of her shattered heart. At 11:47 p.m., Leila began making phone calls. Each one a calculated move. A step toward destroying the life Omar had spent years building. She knew the truth would make headlines. The Calgary Herald's crime reporter was her first target. She would make sure everyone knew about the man who had built his empire on lies. Her next call was to his business partners. She would destroy not only his public image, but his business relationships. No one was safe from the truth she was about to unleash. Then came the social media posts, drafts that would expose Omar's lies to thousands in one click. She had the evidence, the photos, the marriage certificate, the birth certificates, everything she needed to bring him down. But Leila wasn't done yet. She had one final call to make. The emergency divorce lawyers hotline. If Omar thought he could escape this, he was wrong. She threatened to expose everything. The bigamy, the fraud, the deception that had built his entire Calgary empire. Omar's lies were no longer confined to the shadows. They were about to be broadcast for the whole world to see. And as Leila worked through the night, she knew one thing for certain. Omar's world was about to burn. And she would be the one to light the match. The countdown had begun, and nothing could stop it now. Panic set in. As Omar realized the magnitude of what was happening. His life was crumbling before his eyes, and every phone call he made only confirmed his worst fears. His world, his empire, everything he'd built, gone in an instant. His $200 million business empire built on deception, lies, and manipulation was now at risk. A single woman, armed with the truth, was threatening to expose everything he had worked for. Omar could feel the walls closing in. His past was chasing him faster than he could run. He needed A solution, a way to stop this before it was too late. Security cameras show Omar leaving and returning to the suite at 12:23 a.m. carrying a hotel ice bucket. The question remained, why did he feel the need to leave his room and return with an ice bucket? What was he trying to hide? It was a critical moment, one that would later raise more questions than answers. Omar's next move was unpredictable, and the consequences were about to become far more terrifying than anyone could have anticipated. Omar had made his choice, but the question was, would his actions be enough to save him? Or would they destroy him once and for all? What happened in room 28:47 between 12:25 and 12:31 a.m. would shock investigators and forever change the lives of those involved. Investigators would later confirm that the ice bucket, once a tool for convenience, had become the weapon of choice in a brutal act of violence. Blunt force trauma, a single strike that shattered the night. The impact was devastating. One blow, a life extinguished in a moment of blind rage. There were no signs of struggle, no signs that Leila had seen it coming. It was a surprise attack, swift and without warning. Leila was found in the bathroom. Her body crumpled in the wedding dress she had once believed was the symbol of her happiness. But now it lay ruined. Blood staining the fabric, a tragic reminder of what had been taken from her. The crime scene spoke volumes. A life taken, the wedding night transformed into a nightmare. But the most chilling part was the realization that this had all been set in motion by the man who promised to love her forever. The man she had loved, the man she had trusted, had stolen her future, and now her death would become the final unforgiving truth. At 12:45 a.m., Omar made a 911 call. His voice, shaky with fear, echoed through the line as he claimed to have found Leila like this, unconscious, bleeding, and lifeless on the bathroom floor. Omar's words were full of panic. But there was something missing in his voice. A certain sincerity, a depth of real emotion that wasn't there. It was the kind of panic you'd expect from someone who had just committed the act himself. But the inconsistencies in his story became immediately apparent. How could Omar have been so calm, so collected when he had just discovered his fiancée lying lifeless in the bathroom? And why had he not immediately attempted to help her? As the minutes passed, investigators began to notice the holes in Omar's version of events. His movements, his words didn't match the gravity of the situation. It was all too carefully orchestrated, too rehearsed. Detective Ryan Murphy, who would later lead the investigation, saw right through it. He had been investigating crimes for over 2 decades, but what he saw that night was unlike anything he had encountered before. Omar had tried to hide his tracks, but the truth was already beginning to surface. The lies, the deception, the carefully constructed story. None of it could cover the evidence now in plain sight. The investigation into Leila's death quickly unraveled, revealing a trail of lies and contradictions that Omar could no longer hide. The hotel's security footage revealed a disturbing contradiction. Omar had claimed to find Leila in the bathroom, but the timeline of his movements didn't add up. His actions on the footage didn't match the panic in his voice. Blood spatter analysis painted a chilling picture, the lack of a struggle, the positioning of the body. Everything suggested Leila had been taken completely off guard, her death swift and brutal. And then the most damning piece of evidence, Omar's fingerprints. Found on the ice bucket, the weapon that had ended Leila's life. His attempts to stage the scene were as transparent as the bucket itself. Cell phone records uncovered a disturbing detail. Deleted messages between Omar and an unknown contact. Why had he erased them? What was he trying to hide? The digital trail was just another piece of the puzzle that Omar couldn't erase. But the investigation took a shocking turn when police tracked down Nadia Khoury, Omar's first wife in Montreal. What she knew could change everything. Nadia had always believed Omar was struggling with his business, that his absences were nothing more than work trips. The walls were closing in on Omar, and every piece of evidence, every confession led to the same conclusion. He had planned this all along, and now there would be no escape from the truth. Nadia Khoury, Omar's first wife, sat before investigators completely unaware of the life he had been leading in Calgary. She had always believed his absences were due to the pressures of his business, his struggle to make ends meet. She had no idea that Omar was living a double life, leading a lavish existence in Calgary while maintaining his family in Montreal. To her, Omar was the man she loved, the man who had promised to build a future together. But it was all a lie. Nadia had been planning to surprise Omar with the news of their fourth child. A gesture of hope, of renewal. But all of that crumbled in an instant. The truth, devastating everything she thought she knew about her husband. But the most devastating consequence of Omar's lies was not just the destruction of his marriage. It was the effect on his children. 3 innocent lives suddenly without a father. For the children, the loss was profound. They didn't understand why their father was gone. Why he was suddenly no longer a part of their world. The shock, the trauma left deep scars that would never fully heal. For Nadia, the truth wasn't just an emotional blow. It was a financial one as well. As investigators dug deeper, they froze Omar's assets, leaving her with nothing but the devastation of a life she could no longer recognize. Omar's deceit had not only destroyed her heart, but her future. The family she had fought for was now left in financial turmoil, with nothing but the broken pieces of a marriage she never saw coming. For Nadia, the nightmare had just begun. And for her children, the trauma would follow them for the rest of their lives. The trial of Omar al-Rashid became a media circus. His double life, the lies, and the brutal murder of Leila Mansuri shocked not only Calgary, but the entire nation. Calgary's elite society was left in disbelief. The man who had once been hailed as a visionary, a leader in the business world, was now The center of a scandal that would destroy everything he had worked for. The trial concluded with a guilty verdict, first-degree murder. Omar al-Rashid was sentenced to life in prison. His future as shattered as the lives he had destroyed. But the consequences of Omar's actions didn't stop with his imprisonment. His business empire, al-Rashid Energy Corporation, collapsed almost overnight. 847 employees lost their jobs. Their livelihoods wiped away by the fall of a once thriving business. The ripple effects of Omar's lies reached far beyond his personal life. Investors once eager to secure a stake in Omar's empire now filed lawsuits seeking compensation for the losses they had suffered. Trust, built over years of strategic investments, had been shattered by one man's deceit. The al-Rashid family name was destroyed. Once synonymous with success and influence, now a symbol of betrayal and scandal. Today, Nadia Curry works 3 jobs to support her children. The luxurious life Omar had promised her and their family was built entirely on lies. And now Nadia faced the harsh reality of raising her children alone. The life she had envisioned was no longer within reach. The promises of a future filled with security and luxury had been replaced by the daily struggle to make ends meet. Nadia's struggle is one of survival, not just for herself, but for her children. She now lives a life that Omar's lies had never prepared her for. But she faces it with unwavering determination. And while Omar's empire lies in ruins, Nadia and her children move forward, one step at a time, finding strength in the pieces of their broken lives. Omar al-Rashid was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole for 25 years. He'll be 59 when eligible for release, but by then the world he built and the lives he destroyed will have long since turned to dust. But while Omar's life is now contained within the walls of a prison, the damage he caused extends far beyond his own fate. This case revealed something darker about the pressure to maintain perfect facades in elite society and the hidden cost of living a life built on lies. Behind the glitz and glamour of the world Omar inhabited, there was a pressure to maintain perfection, an unrelenting expectation to uphold a flawless image at all costs. It's a world where secrets are buried deep beneath the polished exterior. And those who can't keep up are left to fall. But this case revealed something far more universal. The cost of living a lie. How the pressure to uphold a facade can drive desperate actions. And the innocent victims left behind who have to pick up the pieces when the truth comes crashing down. We all carry the weight of societal expectations whether we realize it or not. But when we prioritize the illusion of perfection over authenticity, the price can be devastating. This story reminds us that the cost of living a lie is not just paid by the one who deceives but by everyone in their orbit. And for those who are left behind, it is the innocent who bear the heaviest burden. The children, the spouses, the families who never asked for this. They are the true victims in a world built on deception. In a final cruel irony, investigators discovered that Omar had been planning to divorce after the honeymoon. He intended to secretly return to his real family in Montreal. But instead, his web of deception cost two families everything. What Omar had hoped would be his escape turned into his greatest downfall. His lies didn't just destroy one life. They destroyed two families and shattered the very foundation of the empire he had worked so hard to build. In the end, nothing lasts forever. Not wealth, not status, and certainly not lies. All that remains is the truth and the lives forever changed by